아니 유럽 별이슈는 튼종네 동마들라 리곤처가 기 케르 무체 게시텐지 장주블라 아니 다가나시 스위스다 리흐텐슈타기 별이 미망기 촉조 까마추기라 쪽베기 잠나마다 미망 페발라 잠리드슬라셔이 아니 강마마로 고체랑하다 speech di inji tone gabyahi leso it pains me but equally fills me with pride to march on this particular day. It pains me because today marks about 65 years since the Dalai Lama, along with the first wave of Tibetans, had to leave their homeland, not knowing how long it will be until they can ever return again. It pains me because the Tibetan people have endured 65 years of brutal, totalitarian oppression underneath the illegal Chinese occupation. But it fills me with pride to say that although the Chinese government has spent a lifetime of trying to assimilate Tibetans and weaken the influence of His Holiness, they have failed over and over again. Because Tibetans have continuously rejected Chinese rule. We Tibetans, we resist. That is what we do. We always have and we always will. And March 10th is the testament of Tibetan resistance. 65 years ago, 300,000 Tibetans rose up in the streets of Lhasa, building blockades and joining forces. They collectively refused to listen to the orders of the China's so-called People's Liberation Army to ensure the safety of His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. And while the blockades have been destroyed by the People's Liberation Army, it's their act of resistance that has ensured His Holiness' safe arrival in exile, where he in turn ensured a future for us, the Tibetan people. That is their legacy. And while their bodies have been long gone, their spirit of resistance has not only remained intact, but it has continued to inspire generations to come, such as the monks from Lhasa, Sara, and Drepung monasteries, when they showed their support for His Holiness and demanded religious freedom in 1987. Embraced by thousands of civilians from different regions and walks of life, these determined people marched united through the streets of Lhasa, proudly displaying the Tibetan flag. In response, the Chinese government declared martial law, resulting in thousands of arrests, hundreds of casualties, and the stifling of international media coverage. But once again, the CCP's attempt to silence the Tibetan people failed. Because the brutal crackdown of the Tibetan uprisings in the 80s garnered international support for the Tibetan freedom movement. A number of Tibet support groups such as the Swiss Tibetan Friendship Association, ICT, Free Tibet, Tibet Initiative Deutschland, all of those were created. And that's the legacy of the courageous protesters in the 80s, the involvement of the international community in advocating for the rights of the Tibetan people. So when we look back at our country's history, let us remind ourselves that yes, the last 65 years have been painful. They have left scars as deep as they come. But beyond that, the last 65 years have been marked by the continued, determined, and collective resistance of the Tibetan people in exile, and more importantly, in Tibet. But resistance isn't just history, it's our presence. Over 1,000 Tibetan monks and lay people from Kamdege are under arrest right now without any information on their mental or physical well-being. Their crime was to have simply protested peacefully against the construction of a mega dam that will result in forced relocations of at least 6 monasteries and 2 villages. That's 100 of families, natives, that are forced to leave their homes behind. Ancient sites with huge cultural and historical value to our people will be carelessly destroyed. So what can we do now? The question is, what is the legacy going to be of the Dege protests in 24? The story of Tibet is not done being written yet. Now it's on us how the next chapters are going to look like. And I don't want to spoil too much, but from what I've gathered, the Tibetan people have continued to resist, not despite, but because of the weight of colonial oppression. I truly believe that as long as Tibet will be under the power of an illegal occupying force, the resistance will live on. Because our fight for political freedom and cultural identity might be a long one, but it's a rightful one. Today, I, a young Tibetan woman born in exile, never having stepped foot in our homeland, stand in front of you in solidarity with the Tibetans inside Tibet. I promise you that we'll never forget them. I promise you that we'll carry the dreams of our ancestors in our hearts until they become reality. And I just need all of you to believe that and to promise that to ourselves and to each other. Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet!